In this video, we'll be discussing Chapter 14, Section 3, Federal Spending. We have discussed so far when it comes about the different types of taxes that are out there and which taxes are collected for federal spending. So in this section, we're going to talk about where does that money go? Those trillions of dollars of tax dollars, what do they do with those? So we have something called mandatory spending, mandatory and discretionary spending. And what that means is that this mandatory spending has to be included in the budget and it has to provide money for the different accounts that are in there. So, for instance, if you look at the budget here, you can see where the majority of the income is being spent or the revenue is being spent from the collected taxes that we see. So, mandatory spending, Congress is required by existing law to do it. They have to spend money in this category. And then we have something called discretionary spending. And what that means is that these are the items that can be cut from the budget. They're not required to have any spending with them. And we'll look at examples of mandatory and discretionary. Now, when we talk about different types of taxes here, we're talking about something called entitlements. And the whole idea behind this is that it's a program that is allowing people to have entitlement to the program, to be able to benefit from it. Means tested, meaning that the individual would have to qualify for this. And if they do, they are entitled to the benefits of it. So let's look at some entitlement programs. First one we're going to look at is Social Security. This is designed when you turn to age 65. Now it's looking to change from 66, 67. You will begin to receive income from the federal government on Social Security. The purpose of Social Security is to offset the cost of those who have retired, those who don't work anymore, and the percentages or numbers that, as you can see from the screen here, identify how many individuals support one person on Social Security. And so as the years go by, it has gone down significantly when it was actually established during the Great Depression. So by the time that these current students, when this video is taken, by the time you hit age 65, 66, the Social Security program is bound to run out of money unless things have changed by then. Another program for an entitlement is known as Medicare. When you turn age 65, you now have access to Medicare through the federal government. It is a health insurance plan for you for the elderly. Also, those who have disabilities and maybe other chronic diseases have the ability to apply for Medicare. But it's free medical that is designed for the elderly. And in reality, it's not free. These individuals who are on the program have been on it for or have paid into the system for decades. So they are contributing from their benefit that they've been paying on their paychecks for their entire careers. Now we have something called Medicaid. Medicaid is the alternative to Medicare for individuals who are at a disadvantage, possibly or more likely when it comes to financially disadvantaged. It's designed to help out the poorest of the poor in that country. And this is what we have in the U.S. is called Medicaid. So if, for instance, your family parents both lost their careers, they don't have their jobs, and they're not able to replace that, they can apply for Medicaid, which is health insurance for the poor. Other mandatory spending would include food stamps and child nutrition, retirement benefits for the federal workers, which is like your congressmen, their staff, all of the different department heads, all of the different ones that are involved with government, vet pensions, rightly so, for our war vets, and also unemployment insurance, which is designed to help those who are unemployed. So these are some other programs that require spending. Child nutrition, retirement and benefits for our federal workers, vet pensions, and unemployment. Skip that one for now. The other type of spending we discussed at the beginning is called discretionary spending. And this is the amount that can be withdrawn from the budget. It doesn't have to receive any spending. And defense spending is by far one of the biggest discretionary spendings on the budget that they put out each year. As you can see from the picture on the bottom, we have hundreds of military bases across the planet. So this is why it's so expensive. When this video is being created, we are still at war, and we've been at war since the early 2000s. So it is all accumulating to the amount of money that's required for spending. Updating the military is also very expensive. So defense spending is one of the biggest things you find discretionary spending. Other programs you'd find on there would include education and training, scientific research, student loans, law enforcement, environmental cleanup, and disaster aid. So these are all things that do not necessarily have to receive funding, but a lot of them do. So we look at those across the board there. So student loans is a huge one right now, and disaster aid, which is not so much a physical disaster, but a pandemic, has been discretionary spending. Bills have been paid to put that. But they require, or the states or the local governments and states can apply for assistance from a discretionary funding fund, which is designed to help in natural disasters. So if there's big hurricanes or earthquakes or whatever the disaster might be, flooding, there is money that the government puts away for states to qualify for this. And again, with our current situation in the U.S. during the pandemic, this money is being spent frequently because there is such a need for it right now. But also we would see that in also federal grants, they can apply for those as well. So there's a lot of spending that goes on with mandatory and discretionary. Now, the thing with the budget increasing is because it's very difficult for anyone in Congress to decide to cut something from the budget. And a lot of that discretionary spending that used to be on the discretionary spending side has now been bumped over to mandatory. So they have less and less available things that they can actually cut when it comes to the spending. So this section was designed to give you an idea of where the government spends its discretionary and mandatory spending.